Hi, thank you for joining this morning. Welcome to our third annual Virginia Ability Forum, the ability equation, employer engagement minus disincentives equals disabilities reimagined. And by that, we mean a world where people with disabilities and their potential are better understood, a diversity of thoughtful perspectives are celebrated, inclusive company cultures are valued, and most importantly, barriers to employment disappear. So businesses that understand the potential will hire individuals with disabilities for their abilities. I'm Bob Lancaster, Virginia Ability Board Chair. Again, welcome to our third annual forum. In recognition of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, we want to acknowledge the achievements and build on our successes. So our forum draws from key findings from the National Council on Disabilities 2020 Progress Report, Increasing Disability Employment, and their tagline, America is a better place when all our people have the opportunity to work. So this will be the first topic of our forum. Wanted to just do a quick poll. If the poll is open, there we go. So how did you hear about the Virginia Ability Forum? I'm gonna give you just a minute to select one of the following. And while we're waiting, I just want to briefly share the story of Virginia Ability. We began with the Business Leadership Network that was originally established in 1994 through the President's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities. And the Virginia Business Leadership formed about that time under, at the time it ran under a business, and we were with Crestar and then SunTrust, and were incorporated as a 501c3 in 2003. And in 2019, we renamed as Virginia Ability to emphasize it's all about people's ability. Right, so looks like we've got largest percentage with email, social media, with some referred by a friend, and 7% other. So no matter how you heard about the forum, we're thrilled to have you join us this morning to hear from a great lineup of speakers. I'll tell you, they are all keynote speakers. But I do want to set the tone for the forum. So if you're looking to be inspired, I hate to tell you this, but we're not here to inspire you. So we're here to put people with disabilities to work, and we need your help. So if you're an employer, the question to ask is, what more can I do? If you're an employment support services organization, the question to ask is, what more can I do? And if you are a person with a disability, you already know what you can do. So we ask that you share your story, let your voice be heard. And you're going to hear some inspiring stories today, but again, that's not why we're here. So we're going to have Q&A with all the presenters at the end, so you can submit your questions into the questions box under your GoToWebinar, and we'll gather those up and present them to all the speakers at the end of the forum. And so we do have one change to the agenda. I'd like to invite Anna Torres Davis to join the webinar. You can unmute your mic. Anna, she's filling in for Lisa Grubbs. And I'll just share just very brief bio since we didn't get that out ahead of time. Anna's a senior attorney advisor at the National Council on Disability, where she advises the council on legal and policy issues and leads the development of reports to the president and to Congress on cutting edge issues impacting people with disabilities. So Anna, welcome to the forum.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate NCD's involvement in this important forum today. As many of you know, NCD has been calling for change in federal policies for decades, and we have seen some very significant positive changes since the enactment of the ADA during this past 30 years. And we would like to continue to see positive change. I don't think that there's ever been a time in our nation's history when we have more technology, more information on how to accommodate workers with disabilities, and actually just more information dispelling myths about people with disabilities. People with disabilities, talented folks with disabilities come in a lot of different forms, and have a great deal of talent and a lot to offer. And I think one of the first things we want to put out there to anybody listening, any employers thinking about how can I get more active in hiring people with disabilities, is just to simply realize that the disability doesn't have to come first. Looking at employers or employees, potential employees with disabilities shouldn't be an off-putting or scary thing. It's just a person with talent that may have different skills, different skill sets, or different abilities. And so, just having said that, I want to move on to giving you an overview of our progress report. This is a report that's issued every year. It is required by Congress, and every year we choose a topic that really speaks to the state of the nation in regard to people with disabilities. And the Council believed that at the 30th anniversary of the ADA, we should really focus on where we are with employment. What have we seen, and what can we do to make this a reality going forward to increase the employment of people with disabilities across the board? We do point out some significant barriers that remain since the passage of the ADA. And though we've seen significant progress in many areas that the ADA covers, we do find that labor statistics continue to show extreme disparities between the labor force participation rates of people with and without disabilities. For example, over the past several decades, only 18% of people with disabilities were employed, compared to 65% of people who did not have a disability. And that's stark. Across all age groups, education levels, experience levels, people with disabilities remain much less likely than workers without disabilities to be employed. And if they are employed, they're more likely to work part-time and in occupations that demand lower wages and offer fewer opportunities for advancement. So we really want to see that continue to change and evolve into a situation where we're seeing people with disabilities working on par with their peers that don't report having them. I want to share a few of the areas that we hit on in the report that are particularly important for employers. And one of those areas is transitioning youth. Employers have a really good opportunity to impact transitioning youth. And transitioning youth are anywhere from 14 to college-age youth with disabilities who are trying to get some experience so that they can successfully move into the adult world of work. Now, what we found was that there continue to be disparities between the skills training and employment-related services available to such youth. There are disparities between what is offered to youth with disabilities and what is offered to youth without disabilities. Students without disabilities are more likely to receive opportunities in job shadowing, internships, part-time work, volunteer work, which prepares them to enter the workforce successfully. To the contrary, students with disabilities were much less likely to have these opportunities. And that's sobering, because we know that by 2030, it's estimated that the demand for skilled workers is going to outstrip supply, and we are going to have a global talent shortage. And the students of today, if provided workplace opportunities if provided the right skills training, especially in employment that has anything to do with STEM, has anything to do with the industries of the future, we're going to make sure that those students grow into the proper world of work and have experiences or opportunities that carry them throughout life. Now, I would like to say that vocational rehabilitation services, I know that many employers are familiar with them. I don't know how familiar, but it's important to know that vocational rehabilitation services exist in every state. And since 2014, they are required to offer pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities. And they offer a range of different services to students to help them transition to the world of work. Unfortunately, most of the transition services that are being provided thus far are not work-based learning experiences that give students real life experience. Now, in 2018, for example, 87% of all the pre-employment transition services provided by VR, they were not work-related. They were not work-based. No, that means they're not going into internships. They're not going into job shadowing. They're not getting part-time jobs. They're in a classroom talking about soft skills, what to do to get a job, maybe resume development. But we know from research that what gets you a job in the future is having experiences while you're young in a workplace. And so NCD has recommended that VR focus on providing more work-based experiences rather than class-taught services, and to establish greater opportunities for students with disabilities to participate in STEM-related training and work experiences. What does this mean for employers? It would be fabulous to reach out to your state vocational rehabilitation office. If you have to go to the very top of the line and reach out to the director and let them know that you are willing to hire paid or unpaid interns, or to offer them any type of work-based experience where they can come into your business and learn the ropes. And this would benefit them greatly. And I think that this also speaks to the need for greater employer engagement. From the employer side reaching out to VR, and also from VR reaching out to businesses. And we are encouraging VR on a regular basis to create better links to employers in their communities so that they can find placements for students with disabilities. Secondly, I'd like to talk about some of the disincentives that people with disabilities face when they try to find work, or once they find work, what happens to some of them. And this is important for employers too, because understanding some of the battles that people may face outside of work that may be preventing them from coming to work or staying at work gives you a better idea about the overall picture for people with disabilities. Now, our report highlights a long-standing employment disincentive tied to federal programs that perpetuate this poverty trap in which people with disabilities have to choose between entering the workforce or losing health care they need to live, or maintain their health care but remain impoverished indefinitely because there are asset limitations imposed by the federal government. That means that if they make too much money in their job, they will be dropped from the health care they need. Now, for some people with disabilities, this is critical. If you're a person with a disability that needs supports, medical support to get you through the day at work, an assistant to help you, personal care attendant to help you, for example, that can be covered by federal insurance. But if they reach a point, if an employee reaches a point where they're making too much money in the job, federal insurance may end and that means they can't actually come to work and continue working. I mean, they will lose their job if they don't have the supports they need to get through the day. Now, if a job has healthcare benefits to offer this employee, private healthcare very rarely, if ever, will cover some of the types of services that people with disabilities need, like personal care attendance on the job at work. That is something that they're not going to get from private insurance. And so you can see that there is a law here, and there is a choice to be made. I can stay here and work for you in a lower paying and less hour position, or I can go full time, but then I may lose, or I will lose, the benefits that allow me to stay here. So understanding that is really important for employers. And I think one of the most important things that employers can do is to get involved in trying to get these limits on substantial gainful activity. That is the term for how much money you're making. Getting these raised. NCD is recommended in this report, among other things, that the law be changed so that people with disabilities that need to have public health insurance to continue working, to continue to have the benefits for the services they need, can do so and continue to make more and more money. And we have recommended a sliding scale or an adjusted scale so that as the person makes more money, they can either buy in to the public health benefits so that they can maintain their insurance, or to do so in other ways. What's important for employers to know is getting involved by having your lobbyist reach out, or writing to your congresspeople and saying, we can hire more people with disabilities into better paying jobs, talented people that are qualified. If you would please look at these NCD recommendations and stop this trap where people cannot continue working or have to be impoverished to have their health care. Secondly, or thirdly, I want to talk about entrepreneurship. You know, thus far, people with disabilities have not been able to participate in one of the Small Business Administration's main programs to help small businesses get off the ground, and that's the 8A Business Development Program. This small businesses and competing for government contracts. And in our report, we recommend that the SBA include people with disabilities in the group that is automatically eligible to participate in this program. Now, this is really speaking to all the entrepreneurs out there that have disabilities, that have been trying to get their businesses off the ground and have faced a lot of challenges doing so, just like any other small business. The 8A program offers a broad scope of assistance to firms that are owned and controlled by at least 51% by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. Now, to be eligible for this, one of these people has to fit into the socially and economically disadvantaged category. And that means that that person has to be subjected to prejudice or cultural bias because of his or her identity as a member of a group and without regard to his individual qualities. And that those social disadvantages have to come from circumstances beyond that individual's control. SBA has established specific groups that are presumed to be socially disadvantaged, but so far people with disabilities aren't included in that group, although they clearly meet the criteria. And individuals who are not included in this presumptively eligible group have to prove every time that they want to compete for a contract that they have experienced individual social disadvantage to SBA in order to participate in the 8-8 program. And this is a heavy burden. And it's NCD's position that people with significant disabilities have absolutely faced cultural bias due to circumstances beyond their control. And such bias is the reason for the enactment of the Rehab Act and the ADA, and that people with disabilities have faced severe discrimination in employment, housing, transportation, public accommodations. And so you can see where this would be a perfect fit to include people with disabilities in this immense opportunity to help them get their businesses off the ground. So we are moving forward with this. We are contacting the Small Business Administration soon. We will be working with them to try to implement this recommendation to include people with disabilities in 8A. And we have also spoken with many other federal agencies that participate on a multi-agency employment task force. And they are absolutely willing to join in and work with SBA to do anything they can to move that recommendation forward. And this leads me to the very end, and I know that my time is limited, so I want to get this other part in, and that really speaks to, again, about employer engagement. It's very important to use the SBA as a tool for employer engagement. Thus far, the Small Business Administration, or SBA, has had certain amount of outreach, and that has been completely focused on veterans with disabilities. But when it comes to the larger group of people with disabilities, they have had really nothing until just this past year when they had two employment fairs, one in DC and one in Connecticut, I think, where they grouped with local organizations and vocational rehabilitation to bring employers in the community in and talk to them about disability employment. And we are saying, SBA, it is time to have these every year in every region of the country, and have your local SBA offices connect with disability organizations and employers in the community and bring them all together and talk about accommodations, talk about dispelling myths about disability, talk about some of the legal questions that often come up with employers, like, do I have to hire? Can I fire? How do I provide accommodations? Where are the resources? There are so many resources for employers right now, so many. Anything you want to know about hiring people with disabilities, the federal government has developed beautiful resources, and you can find them at Department of Labor on their website. Look for reasonable accommodations. Look under the EARN program, EARN, which gives you wonderful resources. We're trying to get SBA to connect in that way. We are trying to connect the federal government supports with the SBA and come to every community in the United States and link with you, the employer, and say, what do you need? How can we help you? And so what you can do as an employer is also reach out to SBA. SBA, tell them that you want to have a job fair. Tell them that you want more information on people with disabilities to be provided on their website, and tell them that you support entrepreneurship opportunities for people with disabilities. I would like to say that I'm going to leave it there because I think my time is up. I want to thank you again for allowing NCD to be a part of this forum. I'm available to answer any questions you have. The report is at www.ncd.gov. There's so much in that report, and it's so hard to hit on all of the high points, but I know that the other keynote speakers today are going to be talking about some of those important aspects, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and for distilling a lengthy report down into, I think, some of the real key messages and findings. So thank you for joining, especially at the last minute, for filling in for Lisa. I do want to circle back on one of your comments about the real life experiences, and that cannot be understated. It's huge in terms of getting any youth into a good job and career path. And even in this time of COVID, Virginia Ability is partnering with DARS for the early part of next year, the month of February, to do virtual business tours. So if your business is interested in participating in helping to share, what careers and jobs look like in your business, and to do that virtually, we'd love to hear from you. So again, thank you, Anna. And now I would like to invite Josh Sloan and Matthew Shapiro to join us. And Josh is with Sportable, and he's also a Virginia Ability board member, and Matthew is with Six Wheels Consulting. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. You can introduce yourselves and take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for this. So as Bob said, I am Josh Sloan. I am a member of the Virginia Ability Board, and I'm also the volunteer and outreach coordinator with Sportable. Sportable is a local nonprofit in Richmond. We provide sports to people with physical disabilities and visual impairments. And that is actually where I met Matthew. Matthew and I have been friends for about 4 years, and that was really, we first bonded kind of over our shared love of adaptive athletics, but then that really led to I think a relationship that is mostly based around our passion for disability rights and disability advocacy and the importance of those things. So Matthew and I are both disabled. We both use wheelchairs for mobility. And so, we see the world from that perspective. Our experiences of living with a disability, that's a huge part of, everything that we incorporate, like everything that happens in our life. So, Matthew, I kind of wanted to start off just by asking you how that perspective of living with a disability led you to starting Six Wheels Consulting, and, why this is so important. So go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. So good morning, everybody. I'm super excited to be with you this morning. As Bob said, my name is Matthew Shapiro, and I am an entrepreneur. I've started my own disability consulting business called Six Wheels Consulting. And so the reason, to answer your question, Josh, the reason I started this work is, quite frankly, I am tired and was tired of the status quo. And by that, I mean, the ADA has been around for 30 years, and we are celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. But we still continue to see a lot of the same struggles that, were being faced even 30 years ago. Lack of accessibility in a lot of places, lack of transportation, lack of employment opportunities, all kinds of things. And I was just very frustrated with how we were making slow progress, and we are making progress, but I don't think we're making big gains in progress for inclusion and diversity of people with disabilities in our communities. And so in 2014, I started Six Wheels Consulting to sort of try to challenge the way society as a whole thinks about, talks about, and approaches disability, to really bring those conversations more on a forefront and have some kind of blunt conversation, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So tell me about how Six Wheels Consulting kind of addresses what you're talking about. What do you guys, like, what do you do? What's the, what's the everyday life look like working at Six Wheels Consulting? What's the kind of work that you're into?
Sure. So every day, I love it. As an entrepreneur, I never know what each day is going to look like, right? I have an agenda for the day, and 9 times out of 10, the agenda is thrown out the window about an hour into my day. But I think that keeps it fun. As far as the work that we do our work in really three main buckets. Consulting projects, so doing assessments of spaces, not from an ADA perspective, but from a common sense perspective. So one of my big kind of selling points for Six Wheels is this whole idea of inclusion above compliance, because something can be compliant but still not be inclusive by the letter, or can be compliant by the letter of the law but not be inclusive for all people to fully be able to engage in all aspects of that business or what society is trying to offer. So we do assessments from kind of that common sense approach on how can businesses, schools, nonprofits, really anybody sort of make their space more inclusive to people with disabilities. And oftentimes we even consider the elderly in those situations too, right? Because a lot of times we should also probably be lumping the elderly population into a lot of these disability and inclusion conversations as well. We also do tons of resource development, webinars, one-pagers, other resources that businesses ask us to help contribute to. So that's kind of our consulting side. Also do a ton of public speaking. My greatest strength is my ability to communicate. So anytime I can get up and share a message about diversity and inclusion and disability specifically, and then also expose people who may have no connection to disability whatsoever to what it's like to be on our wheels, so to speak, Josh, right? I think, I'm really making a huge impact there. And I've been fortunate enough to speak at many great businesses, schools, K-12 and college. And I'm always looking for other ways to continue to engage those messages, a lot like this morning's forum. And then lastly, I am the biggest political nerd that you will ever meet. So I engage in lobbying for the Virginia General Assembly. I work for an organization called Virginia ABSI, the Virginia Association of People Supporting Employment First. And we fight for people with disabilities working in the community for at or above minimum wage, and working in competitive integrated settings and not what's known as sheltered workshops, where they often make below minimum wage and are segregated from the rest of our community. So I do a lot. I love my work. It keeps me on my toes every day. And really, I'm just trying to be a voice for those that don't have a voice and make an impact for the disability community as a whole.
That's great, man. It that all sounds super interesting. I particularly think that like some of the consulting stuff that you do is really cool. Is there like a particular consulting project that you've done that you thought was really, I don't know, impactful or fun, or was it just kind of a good example of those kind of things?
Yeah, so first of all my work is fun, right? So any day I get to do something awesome and speak to you all or do an assessment or something, I take that as an awesome opportunity. I've been very fortunate to do some assessments for the city of Richmond. I did an assessment of City Hall from an accessibility and from the standpoint of people with disabilities and the elderly, to help sort of make City Hall more accessible and inclusive to those populations. Was also fortunate enough to kind of do a very similar thing for Henrico County, where we evaluated the public library facilities in Henrico to help make that whole process for individuals more easily accessible and easygoing, so to speak. And then just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now, I can't remember at this point, but I was fortunate enough to do a keynote for Sentara Healthcare for Disability Employment Awareness Month. So I'm just, I get to dabble in a lot of different things. One of the huge reasons I wanted to get into this work was, if you're an accountant, you do accounting all day, and nothing against accountants, but I get to have my hands in a lot of different areas when it comes to disability inclusion. And that just gets me excited every day when I wake up. And, you know, the most important thing I think you can say about your work is that you have to love what you do every day. And if you do, you're not really working a day at all. So that's where I'm at with Six Wheels, and just super excited to be able to do it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, through my outreach work, we do actually, fairly similar stuff. But one thing that I learned that is like a really interesting example of a pretty simple fix for accessibility features is a lot of times automatic door buttons do not work. And
Yes,
that's something everybody with a wheelchair kind of knows. But something that I learned is that the reason for that is because there are two ways you can set those up. You can do battery operated or hardwired.
sure.
And most of the time, people opt to do them battery operated. And so those batteries just die. And people don't understand why the buttons don't work. But if, it's a really simple fix just to call your, what do you call them? Like, handyman or whatever, and just get them to replace those batteries. And that's that costs, next to nothing. So are there some
Sure.
other stuff kind of like that when you go into somewhere on like a consultation accessibility trip that you can kind of let folks on the call know something simple, something easy that people can just kind of do today if they wanted to?
One of the easiest things to do, and this is super simple, is like set up your floor plans, right, of your office spaces so that they're more open space floor plans, right? So often trying to navigate an office space as a wheelchair user is an adventure, right? Because you've got trash cans in weird places, you've got people put random chairs in weird places, and just there's a lot of clutter I've noticed in a lot of office spaces. And so, if a business took time to lay out a floor plan that was more conducive to navigating if you are a wheelchair user, or have some other mobility aids, or maybe you have a service animal or anything where you would have to get around easier, that could be the first huge step. And really, that costs you nothing, right? That costs you time and effort as a business to do that. And a lot of what we hear around accommodations and diversity and inclusion work is like, oh man, all this stuff costs so much money and so many resources, and businesses are sometimes unsure of how to go about doing that. And a lot of the suggestions I offer in the consulting work that I do is I try to offer common sense and cost-effective solutions. Right, there are solutions that can occur that cost $100 or less, right? Oftentimes, to get into businesses would just need a portable ramp, and that portable ramp can cost about $100, and that would open up an entirely new potential group of people to come into your stores and buy your goods, right? But businesses don't always do that. Again, that's not a huge investment. Yes, it's a small investment, but I think that investment the reward could potentially outweigh that investment that you do. So little things like that. There's more that we can dive into, but I know we have other questions. So little examples like that are good places to start.
Right, and not just providing accessibility so that you can have customers with disabilities, but also you can have employees with disabilities as well if
Yep.
your space is accessible. So that kind of brings me to something else I really wanted to talk about with you, which is how are these issues, not just of accessibility, but of unfair practices and policies that are preventing people with disabilities from getting employment. How is all this stuff, and how is the work that you're doing and the problems you're trying to address, how does that tie in with the employment of people with disabilities?
So I mean, I think it's we have to do, we've got 56 million Americans in this country who are starving for work, and as was stated in our previous presentation, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is um, really, really high. And what I think businesses need to realize, and that's what I think this forum is so great, this morning, is these people are starving for work, right? And they know that they can do the work. They need businesses to give them the opportunity to show what they can do. And I can tell you from experience and just engaging with so many people that people with disabilities are going to bring a number of things to your workplace, right? They're going to be loyal because they are, they have often struggled to find an employment opportunity. And so for the longest time, they're going to stick around and they're going to try and do great work in your business. They are going to, they're going to be resilient because people with disabilities have to be resilient on a day-to-day basis. So if they run into a situation in the workplace, they're going to have the skills and abilities to know how to bounce back and how to adapt in that situation. And then lastly, they're also going to be able to be creative, out-of-the-box thinkers, which businesses and employers are begging for on a day-to-day basis, right? You have to be able to think critically. You have to be able to think of unique ways to solve problems. And that's how you and I live as wheelchair users and people with disabilities live on a day-to-day basis, right? We have to solve, how am I going to get from point A to point B today? How am I going to put my shirt on or put my outfit on in an appropriate manner? If my original plan doesn't work, then I have to call an audible and I have to come up with a new solution. So that philosophy is hardwired into our brains, right? Because we live that every day. And so I think businesses need to realize that, like, there is a huge market that we're not tapping into from an employee standpoint and from a customer standpoint. So that's why I'm so excited that we're having these conversations today to continue to have these dialogues.
Absolutely, man. I think listening to the former speaker, that's stuff that I'm very keyed into, but man, it really fires me up. And I really don't, there's just so much work to do. So
Sure.
how did you end up taking the entrepreneurial route versus, say traditional employment? Like what led you to be your own boss instead of having a boss?
Sure. So first of all, I love it because if I try to fire myself, that would be really strange. And so I I was really fortunate enough to have tons and tons of job interviews. I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University in the fall of 2013 and had done tons and tons of interviews, but was never getting anywhere. And like I thought I was doing really well in interviews. For me, interviews are pretty straightforward because I really view them as just conversations. And hopefully, as everyone on the call can sort of tell, I have the gift to be able to communicate, hopefully, pretty clearly. And so I thought I was doing really well, but I wasn't getting offered jobs. And so I was getting really discouraged after I graduated from VCU and needed to figure out a way to make money. And so one night in December of 2014, it sort of dawned on me to take my years of working with youth and doing youth advocacy and thinking about self-determination to try and start my own business to, again, sort of challenge what we think about and talk about when it comes to disability. So I like it because I am my own boss, right? I can set my own hours. I can sort of take on projects that I'm passionate about and don't have to be, the square peg in the round hole and say, like, this is the work I must do. But there are certainly challenges with that too, right? I'm not getting paid every 3 weeks, right? Like a normal 9 to 5 situation would be. And so there's often lots of stress of like, all right, when is that next paycheck going to come in? But I like it because my success is going to sink or swim depending on how hard I work, right? And how many connections I make and how I can make an impact in the work I'm doing. And at the end of the day, for me, this is not about the spotlight or fame or fortune for me, right? Like I genuinely want to make a change in this world to get people to think about disability differently. I can't tell you how many times, even to this day, people still come up to me and go, I'm glad you're out today, or talk to me as if I'm not intelligent or, like I am 5 years old, right? So they'll come up to me and they'll go, how are you doing today? And sort of speak to me in a very sort of unforgiving tone, so to speak. And those are the types of things that motivate me every day to be like, all right, we still have a lot of work to do. And that's what I try to do in my everyday grind with Six Wheels.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, let's see. Last week I was helping a new recent spinal cord injury, paraplegic. I'm quadriplegic, spinal cord injury, and me and my coworker met this guy who has just been discharged from the hospital, and we met him with a couple of hand cycles, so bikes that people with spinal cord injuries can use. We met him at a park
Yep.
to let him trial these bikes, and this guy is huge athlete, huge cyclist when he was able-bodied, and this is his first time trying adaptive hand cycling. And he had a great time. He, really killed it, super fast, super fun. And then some random person comes up and does that kind of like patronizing, wow, this is so neat that, you're so, and I just looked at him and I was like, look, man, this is not going away. You're going to be dealing with that pretty much permanently from now on. So yeah, it's great that, you take even like something as simple as these misinterpretations of what people with disabilities are like and what our lives are like, and try to change that and try to change those perceptions. I think that's really important work.
Well, I mean, somebody has to do it, right? And like I, again, am using my greatest strength, my voice, to try and make an impact. Kind of thinking about that, I've worked out at the gym for a number of years. I haven't done it for a while now because of COVID, obviously. And there's been at least 2 or 3 times when I've been working out with my trainer, and I'll be, back in my chair, and I'll be bench pressing, and somebody will be like, "Can I take a picture of you bench pressing?" And that's always very much like a bizarre engagement, because it's like, well, would somebody else just randomly take a picture of you if you were working out? And even my trainer has always sort of like looked at it in a weird way, that things like that happen. It's not done in a malice or a negative intent, but I think those are the types of things that we need to try to get away from, to normalize just diversity and inclusion in general.
Absolutely, man. So you brought up COVID, and I wanted to ask you about this. How do you think like this current work from home and climate, virtual work, remote work, how do you think that affects the potential for employing people with disabilities?
Sure. So I will start off by saying that I am the most extroverted extrovert. So many people on the call who know me, they know I'm, as outgoing can be, right? And so it has been a hard time for me and a lot of us to engage in this work from home world. However, I also view it as a tremendously huge opportunity to engage with the disability community around employment, right? People with disabilities for years have been begging and saying, all right, employers, please hire us and allow us to work from home as part of an accommodation. But businesses have often said, oh my gosh, I can't do that because that requires so many accommodations and financial burdens on us in order to help sort of facilitate that working from home scenario. Well, now that is sort of that argument is out the window, right? Because many of us are working from home, and businesses are finding that workers are more efficient and more, they get more work done. And you've heard many great businesses, particularly in Silicon Valley, like Google and Twitter, have basically said, yeah, we're gonna have our employees stay working from home, right? Because if you have if workers are happy and they have a great work-life balance, they're going to be doing more work. And so that is a perfect opportunity to capitalize on the 56 million Americans in this country who live with disabilities, who are looking for employment, but can't necessarily get to an office space, right? Because of fears of COVID and catching COVID, or transportation, not getting them to work in an efficient manner. So why not now have businesses capitalize on this whole work from home movement, right? And try to figure out ways to engage the disability community to say, work from home, we'll help get a setup going, and you're employed and you're also helping us, the business, continue to make an impact during this downtime for a lot of the economy.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's a really interesting, you know, it's just interesting in general how much, particularly the big lockdown in like the April, May timeframe, it really can show you how much disabled people can do and how much just people in general can do from home when it comes to just the work world. I mean, the internet is a crazy thing and it really
Yes,
enables us to, I mean, right now we're doing a forum which would, traditionally be in a big event space venue, and we're able to execute it completely digitally. So I think it's something that employers need to think about a lot more, which is that if you're worried about, say, people with disabilities and too many sick days, or like medical things coming up in which people aren't able to get to work as much or get into the office as much. I mean, this work from home environment really makes all those points moot, I think. And
well,
I think
and the other, so I've attended a ton of probably 4 or 5 conferences, right, while we've been on COVID. And the other thing that's really impactful about it is having all this stuff done digitally allows more people to access a conference than they might have been able to if it was in person, right? And so I'm actually even advocating for a lot of these conferences to also now have a digital component, so that, say, somebody can't get to Orlando where the conference is, but they still want to be able to participate, right? And they still would pay to listen to sessions and things like that. Why not have a virtual component to be able to allow more people access to the stuff that you're sharing in conferences? So I just think there's a huge opportunity all around to really open up a lot of opportunities in the digital space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an either or thing. It's a both thing, and I think that's really a central fact to universal design in general, which is, things should be as accessible as possible for all people, regardless of disability, gender, orientation, uh, sexual preference, like whatever it is. Like, things should just be as easy to use for everybody as possible. And I think having
Sure.
a virtual option for anything is great. I mean, and just to be clear, people with disabilities can do jobs where they're out and about. Don't let us.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can tell you right now, Matthew and I's jobs we both do a lot of public speaking on non-COVID times. I am
Yes.
driving all over the greater Richmond area, attending, like, I'll be at a school in the morning, and then I will be at a business in the afternoon, and then I will be at my rugby practice at night. Like, people with disabilities are mobile. So again, it's not an either or thing, it's a both thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes, and I have one last question, and that is
Sure.
just, what are some specific concrete action items that people can take away from this and implement in their business or in their workplace right now? Like, what are some things we talked about, some like physical accessibility stuff, and you can talk more about that, or you can talk more about ways to find employees with disabilities, whatever it is. Like, what are some things people can do today?
Sure. So a couple of things that I can immediately think of is do more job fairs that actively seek out, we're hiring folks with disabilities. We really want, we really want your unique skills and talents. That's one. Another is to highlight and promote people with disabilities on your marketing materials, your websites, your business cards, anything that is outward facing into the community. Show people with disabilities on those places, right? People with disabilities are more likely to want to work somewhere if they see somebody that looks like them, right? And it's often hard to be the first of something to go into a workplace and help shift change. So if I see somebody that looks like me, I'm going to realize, all right, maybe that business understands it, and I can feel comfortable going into that space. Um, do assessments of your spaces so that they're open and easily more easily can be more easily navigated with mobility aids. And then in your diversity and inclusion conversations, right, make sure that disability is included in those conversations. So often when we talk about D&I, we're talking about race and gender and ethnicity, and many times I'm in the back of the room saying, have we thought about disability as part of this conversation? And so make sure that it is part of all the events that you're doing. Make sure that it is part of your I guess, purposes and mission statements from a D&I standpoint. Make sure disability is explicitly included in those conversations so that you can truly say, our business is fully inclusive and diverse of all people, because it really does need to represent all people.
Yeah, definitely. And if you have employee resource groups at your business, is there a disability employee resource group? If not, there should be. So we're about to wrap up. If you want to learn more about what Matthew does, it's you can check out sixwheelsconsulting.org.
.com.
Excuse me. And that's the number 6, not the letters. If you want to learn more about Sportable, you can check us out at sportable.org. If you want to listen to Matt and I talk more, Matt has a podcast. I also have a podcast. You can check both of those out. Mine's called the Sportable Podcast. Matt, what's your podcast called?
It's called the Six Wheels Consulting Disability Podcast.
So check those out. And if you have questions for Matthew, we can do those at the end of the forum for around 11:40. So stick around for
that.
And I
will also add, and I'm looking forward to that Q&A as well, but I will also add, I do have a handout in one of the handout sections on your side panel there. So you can download that and learn more about what I do. So thank you for having me this morning.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, Josh, Matthew, thank you so much. Shared a lot of really good information. Coming from your experience, I think is very meaningful. And, we all have unintended biases. I know I do. I encounter different disabilities. I have a daughter with Down syndrome. And even with that, you think, hey, I know how to respond or treat an individual. And it really just comes down to, you treat them like everybody else, right?
Sure.
So, and you look at the strengths and the abilities. One of the things I noted as well as you were talking about what businesses can do, I attended the National Organizational Disability annual conference a few weeks back, and one of the topics was nothing about us without us. And so you really need to have the right people that understand the accessibility issues and really, work to universal design, right? It should work for all employees. So anyway, thanks for all the information. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of good questions coming through at the end. And so now I would like to invite Sarah Pennington to join the forum. And one of the quotes out of the progress report was, perhaps no barrier to employment is more consistently identified as imposing unnecessary limitations on the access of people with disabilities to economic self-sufficiency than the disincentives tied to means-tested public benefits. Namely, one is Social Security disability insurance. So, for example, in order to be eligible for SSDI, people with disabilities must demonstrate to the SSA that they cannot work. So, there's some deep-rooted policies that I know National Council on Disability is working towards resolve. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit about at least one counter to these disincentives. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Sarah's with Virginia Able Now. So thank you again for joining.
Bob. Yeah, and I think we have a poll question up on the screen if folks can see that. So select your answer. The question is, have you heard of ABLE accounts before? So select either yes or no. And are we going to be able to see those answers?
Yeah, here's they're coming up.
We're tabulating results.
Yeah, tabulating. We're at 50-50, 50% yes and 50% no. And it's just creeped up to 52% no. And so yeah, looks like about half the participants are aware of ABLE accounts.
Okay. Well, that is a perfect jumping off point for this presentation. I hope that folks will walk away in my few short minutes with a better understanding of this tool. So thank you, Bob. ABLE really goes hand in hand with these conversations about disability employment. For an employee who's working, perhaps they're taking advantage of various work incentives, services, and supports. That employee is making more money. And an ABLE account is a unique tool that allows them to save their money for the future. In my few minutes, I'm going to briefly explain ABLE accounts, and then I'm going to dispel 3 myths that many people have about this new type of account. So first, what is ABLE? The Achieving a Better Life Experience, or ABLE Act, was signed into federal law in 2014 and Virginia law in 2015. ABLE represents a transformative policy change to advance independence and economic self-sufficiency for people with disabilities. ABLE accounts are tax-advantaged savings and investment accounts that are available to eligible individuals with disabilities. Investments grow tax-free when used to pay for qualified disability expenses. Account owners may be eligible for the Saver's Tax Credit. And for Virginians, Virginia offers an annual state tax deduction for contributions, which is another tax incentive to use these accounts. But the most important feature is that money in an ABLE account does not impact eligibility for certain benefits, such as Medicaid and SSI. And that brings us to the first myth that I want to dispel. Many people still think if I save more than $2,000 or I have more than $2,000 in assets, I will lose my benefits. And let's dispel that myth right off. Funds saved in an ABLE account will not affect eligibility for certain means-tested benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. And you can find all of those details on our ABLE Now website. ABLE is a game changer, and for the first time, it allows people with disabilities to save for the future without jeopardizing their benefits that they're receiving today or benefits they'd like to remain eligible for down the road in the future. For the second myth, we often hear people think that they can save an unlimited amount of money once they open an ABLE account. And the truth is, the total annual contribution limit for ABLE is $15,000 per year. And that's the 2020 number. Periodically, that number may go up based on inflation, but that's $15,000 per year. There's also a cool provision called Able to Work, which increases the contribution limit for someone who's saving their own income from a job. Under the Able to Work Act, working account owners who don't participate in their employer-sponsored retirement plan may be eligible to contribute up to an additional $12,490 per year. So if you're doing the math, that's an opportunity to save up to almost $27,000 per year in an ABLE account without impacting your public benefits. And another important note here is that anybody can contribute to someone's ABLE account. The account owner can contribute, the account owner's family and friends can contribute, maybe there's gift contributions, and an employer can contribute to an ABLE account. And that brings us to the final ABLE myth that I want to dispel, and it's related to how you open an ABLE account. So many people must think that they must visit their bank to open their ABLE account. And in fact, enrollment is completely online. The Federal ABLE Act opened the door for states to administer these ABLE programs. It's a very similar structure to 529 college savings accounts, if you're familiar with those. ABLE Now is the Virginia ABLE program, and ABLE Now is administered by Virginia 529, the independent state agency that manages the state's college savings programs. Eligible individuals can open their ABLE Now account online, and we also administer the ABLE America program, which is offered by some financial advisors. Now, here's where I hope many of you listening to this webinar can help. The challenge we have is spreading the word. As you've heard, ABLE accounts are a brand new option. ABLE Now, Virginia's ABLE program, has been available for just under 4 years now. Nationally, less than 1% of eligible individuals with disabilities have opened an ABLE account. That's right. There's 8 million eligible Americans with disabilities, and just a small fraction have opened their ABLE account so far. We see a lack of awareness and a fear that these accounts are just too good to be true. For decades, the community has been told they can't have assets more than $2,000 in order to receive their benefits. So when we tell people about this new financial tool, it makes sense that people are skeptical. Employers can help us spread the word about ABLE as a resource for their employees with disabilities, or employees who have a child or eligible family member that they want to save who has a disability. We would love to partner with some employers to pilot the inclusion of ABLE as an employee benefit. For some of your employees, ABLE is a strong alternative to a 401k or other retirement plan. And we're also happy to offer ABLE education materials, webinars, seminars, and resources for your employees. In the handout section, you'll find some information on ABLE Now. Please don't hesitate to reach out if we can partner to support your workforce or spread the word on these brand new accounts. I'll hand it back over to you, Bob.
Great, thank you, Sarah, so much for joining. And at least with half our poll participants, hopefully that was beneficial information. You and I had talked about the opportunity for businesses, and the idea of perhaps piloting. My daughter pre-COVID is fully employed. She's been furloughed since March, unfortunately, but fully employed with all benefits. And unfortunately, she misses out on the 401k employer matching contributions to that retirement savings. So it's talk about disincentives and the things that stand in the way for individuals to be independent. So I think hopefully we'll get some businesses interested in piloting with the ABLE Now, and there is additional information about the ABLE Act, and which is available through the National Council on Disability, as well as Virginia's ABLE Now. So clearly read up on the information, reach out to Sarah or contact ABLE Now directly. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining today. So now I would like to invite John Robinson to join the forum. Good morning, John.
Morning, Bob.
I know I said all of our presenters are keynote speakers. When I talked to John yesterday, he said this is his 20th webinar. So you've got it well polished by now. John is the partner, CEO, and founder of Our Ability. We've been working with John over the past year in a partnership. And Our Ability has a coalition of 40 New York State businesses interested in hiring individuals with disabilities. So John, looking forward for you to kind of share a little bit about your story and some takeaway for our participants.
Thanks, Bob, and it's good to be here and good to be talking to everybody. It's the hard part about COVID for me as somebody that's been speaking about being a person with a disability for the past 10 plus years, starting this organization. Usually I do it in person and I get to meet everybody and meet over coffee and see people face to face. In this world, we don't get to do that very much. So that's a challenge. It's physically, it's a good thing. I don't have to get on an airplane. I don't have to stay in a hotel, but from a personal perspective, it's not much fun talking to your camera and hoping people engage. So, I feed off of the questions and answers that we'll get later. That's really the fun part for me. Listening to the previous speakers, Our Ability is a S Corp. So I started a small business nearly 10 years ago, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So that's great. Entrepreneurship is so key for individuals with disabilities. Actually, I'm part of a brand new project at Syracuse University that's going to start an entrepreneur program on campus for people with disabilities. So we're proud of that. Listening to the Josh and Matthew. No, is that right? Yeah, Josh and Matthew. I'm a huge sports fan and grew up in New Hampshire in the mid 80s without adaptive sport. So I didn't get a chance to play adaptive sport. Luckily, I've been able to play golf. So I've played, because of COVID, instead of traveling all over the country, I've probably played 45 times this year. And so that's fun. But I'm very lucky that my wife pushed me to get on a hand cycle in 2012. And for each of the past 8 years, with the exception of this year because of the virus, we have done a hand cycle trip across New York State from Buffalo to Albany, where I live in Albany. It's 375 miles. It takes us 10 days to do it, but we've done it to raise awareness for people with disabilities. So it's nice to hear about adaptive sport. That's really cool. So small business owner, adaptive sport, and yes, I have an ABLE account. I got to say, big fan of the ABLE account. A little sad to see so many people that have not heard about it. I urge you to look it up, and even if you put a little bit of money in it each month, it's really to your benefit. So we've done a lot of work in New York State with the comptroller's office around the New York ABLE account. They're one of them, but they're all over, and so definitely find them because it's so very important. And the reason the ABLE account's important and small business is important is because of economic opportunity, and that's where our Ability, which is our organization, comes in. And I'm going to explain a little bit why and get into some of the work that we do, and then hopefully, like I said, in question and answer period, we get to talk a little bit. I went to a small high school in New Hampshire. We moved to New Hampshire in 1980 when I was in 7th grade from a very small town in upstate New York. Moved to this bigger city in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I was in 7th grade, as I said, and my parents were looking for what school I was going to. My dad accepted a position as an Episcopal priest in the community, and he took a picture out of me with my artificial arms and legs on, and the school said to my parents that I wasn't welcome to go to public school in New Hampshire in 1980. Even though that was probably technically against the law, that's what they said. They didn't want to be sued, they didn't want me to get hurt, etc. My parents advocated for me really early on, and they came to an agreement that the Manchester City School District would pay for me to go to prep school for 6 years. And so they paid for me, in essence, to go away. And what was good and bad about it is this: I made out like a bandit. I got a great education. I was really lucky in retrospect. But I was also, it's the first taste I ever had of discrimination. And it's not something I certainly thought about at the time, but I've thought about it over the years that, how you deal with discrimination is where you go. And like I said, I was really lucky to be able to have that education. Went to Syracuse, went to that small high school, and in that period of time in that small high school, I watched a lot of sports. And knowing I couldn't play sports, there wasn't adaptive sport, as I said, I gravitated to the media world. I started watching a lot of television, but I'd watch television in a different way, about the industry of television, not necessarily just watching a broadcast. I got really mesmerized with how it all worked. So I ended up going to Syracuse University to study television, radio, film management. And in my period of time at Syracuse University, a lot of things changed. One was I went from a very small high school to a lot of people. And so I had to get used to being stared at, because I'm 3'9" with no arms and no legs, or limited arms and legs. And so it became a very interesting experience, having people stare at me all the time, look at me, ask me questions, and me having to learn how to engage with other people. It became very evident early that the 49 brothers and sisters I went to high school with, who had to deal with me because we were such a small school, there were people out there that didn't need to be my friend. And so it became an interesting challenge for me to make friends and to learn how to adapt to an able-bodied world. And then in the process of doing that, I met some of the very best friends in my life that I still share, that taught me how to be a person in society as much as anything else. And it also taught me that, yes, this was the industry I wanted to be in, and I really enjoyed my communications education. Great 4 years at Syracuse University, studied television, radio, film, had an internship at a TV station in Boston, drove 60 miles every day to get to that internship and back in Boston traffic. If you know anything about Boston traffic, it's like DC traffic. It's insane. But it was the way I knew that I wanted to be a part of the community. I graduated in June of 1990 or May of 1990 at Syracuse University. I lived with 7 other guys in a house. We had been friends all 4 years. 4 of us were in the communications school. One of us, Jim, got a job immediately with a newspaper in New Jersey and now is an assistant district attorney. One of us, Dave, got a job immediately with Golf Magazine and co-wrote my autobiography and is bothering me on email right now. So we're still connected and still tight. And then another one of us, Pat, again, one of the very best friends in my life, Pat got a job immediately with the National Basketball Association and today runs NFL Films. And then there was me, and I had the same GPA and the same internship and the same experiences, and I didn't get a job. I was unemployed from May of 1990 to December of 1994. And if I learned a lot going to a big university, and I learned a little bit about being rejected at public school, I certainly learned a lot about myself and the world around me, quite frankly, in hearing the word no. In being rejected at TV stations from Montreal to Washington, D.C., Toronto to Chicago, and right back through to Boston. If you put a pinprick in the middle of that and draw a big circle, I was rejected by some of the best and worst TV stations in the country. I did a lot of things in that in-between period of time. I took a lot of odd jobs. I took those odd jobs because I needed to pay bills, quite frankly, and I wanted to have a lifestyle. One of the odd jobs I took was telemarketing. I learned how to sell advertising at a local print shop. I got a job offer at in Toronto, Ontario, at what was supposed to be a fundraising organization that ended up being a scam. Didn't obviously know. They didn't put it on the advertisement that this is a scam. So I got in my truck and moved to Toronto, Ontario for a short period of time, and thankfully I did that. Thankfully I took that anyway because one of the people that I meet and talk about meeting, I talk about my friends in college that taught me how to be who I am, but I also met my wife, and I met my wife when I moved to Toronto in 1991. And I share that with you because one of the things that you would not ask me unless I brought it up was about my personal life. And so I'm going to talk mostly about my career, but I also am going to share with you that Andrea and I have been married for over 27 years. And I share that with every group that I speak with because you would wonder if you found somebody to share his life with when you see me at 3'9" walking down the street. And I share that with you because I have. And I also share that with you because that unemployment period of time became very important to me in trying to pay for a new family and trying to prove that I can be worthy. And so that's my mindset. You see, it wasn't the job that I wanted per se in the communications industry. It was what the job afforded me, which was the income from the job, the economics independence from the job, like the ABLE account, and the opportunity that all affords, like being able to buy a vehicle, being able to have a house and the mortgage you can't afford, and the 2.5 dogs, and all of the things that statistics say you have. And so I share with everybody that I did get married in that period of time, and that was really important. I'll also take a time out and answer the next question that you may have in your mind. Yes, we have children. We have 3 children. Hayden is 31 years old, so you can do the math on the 27-year-old marriage and figure that one out. He's a wonderful young man. He's a forest firefighter in the state of Montana, putting out forest fires, and was in California up until a week ago. And so we're proud of what he is and who he's become. We have a 23-year-old daughter who is working at Boston Children's Hospital right now in the research lab. which is pretty important right now in today's day and age of what's going on with the virus. And so really proud of her and what she's doing. And then we have a 17-year-old son as well. So if you do the math on 31 to 17, we were not smart along the way. We took way too many gaps, and quite frankly, we've had teenagers in our house forever. And 17, he's a senior in high school. He's moving out next year, and I can't wait. We are ready to just be the dog and just the two of us, and so that's going to be exciting. But we are very proud of all three of our children. They're all very independent, very, very intelligent, and that's really wonderful to say as a parent. And I bring that up because if you were curious, at least I've opened the door and you can ask questions later. But that unemployment period of time was really key. And I was unemployed in my chosen field, again, from graduation in May of 1990. I finally got a job offer in December of 1994. So 4.5 years later, ironically, right back in Syracuse, New York, at the NBC television station in Syracuse. And here's how my career began. I was interviewed 3 times by the TV station in Syracuse, New York. I was pulled aside by the local sales manager who grew to like me an awful lot. I liked him an awful lot. He's been one of my mentors. And he pulled me aside after the 3rd interview and he asked if he could walk me out of the station. And that was a little odd, but okay. Walked out of the station with him, and as we got outside, he said, "John, I want to say something to you." He goes, "I want you to know that my boss does not want me to hire you." Now, I had met his boss and thought it went fine, but I'd heard this for 4.5 years, and I said, "Okay." And he said, "I just want you to know we've come to an agreement that this hire's on me." And my boss said, "Even though I don't want you to hire him, I'll let you hire him under these conditions. And here are the conditions. So, John, I'm going to print you business cards. I'm going to offer you a job. I'm going to give you a 3-month trial. We're not going to give you a salary or benefits, but we will pay you commission, 100% commission on any sale that you bring into the TV station. If it works well over 3 months, then we'll have another 3-month trial and we'll go from there. Will you take the job?" Well, after hearing the word no for 4.5 years and watching my peers, as I said, all succeed, it was really hard to go home and tell my wife that I was going to say no. And so I took the job. And I have to tell you, it was a leap of faith on my part. And it was, I really sort of gambled on myself to some degree. I didn't really know what to expect. But in my first month, in December of 1994, I had $17,000 in new business advertising sales. In my first full year with that TV station and the 9 stations they owned around the country, I was the #1 new business salesperson for that television station group. And I know this in 1995 because there was a contest that year. And so I obviously proved myself with the group, and they eventually gave me the sort of the title of a full-time person, and then eventually got salary plus benefits plus commission and all the things that you get. But I was really excited about the contest because the contest was, you get to go to Key West, Florida in the winter of 1996 if you win the Salesperson of the Year contest, and you can bring your +1 with you. Now, living in Syracuse, New York, it snows awful lot from October till April, and you know what? You get sick of snow, so I got really excited about that. So I really worked hard, and I was #1, #2 within the company all year in 1995. And that first Tuesday in 1996, I knew that I was #1 and went into the sales meeting really excited and sat down and had a big smile on my face. And it was announced in that sales meeting that the #2 person was chosen to win the award and to go to Key West, Florida with their partner. And I was pulled aside and said, sorry, they know that I actually won, but it was decided by the ownership group that the #2 person looked the part. And discrimination doesn't end, but it's how you deal with it that matters. I worked for that TV station for 5 years, and I sold my you-know-what off. And all of the ownership changed, the management changed, my peers changed. When I left that TV station in 2000 to move here to Albany, New York for the NBC affiliate here, a couple of things occurred to me. One, I was the longest tenured salesperson at 29 years old. I outlived everybody else, and I made a bunch of money. but discrimination didn't end. And I looked for a new opportunity. And I ended up moving here because I was offered a really good job in Albany. And I had a good 16-year career in TV. I worked for 3 different stations. The last of the stations I worked at was at the public broadcasting station here in the capital of New York, which had a footprint and a lot of projects around all of New York State. And I ended up being a station manager for production and sales, and learned an awful lot, and really, really enjoyed my television time, especially at public broadcasting at the end. But a couple of things happened. And one of the things that happened was that as I got more mature and into my 30s, which is odd to say at 51 thinking mature is 30, I don't know about that, but I would get asked to speak publicly. And it would be my clients at first, and then they would recommend me to other people, and I'd get asked to speak publicly about overcoming obstacles, which means how do you deal with your disability and how do you sell. And I would do this. And I would tell a lot of that same story, and I would say that I really struggled finding my first position. And what I noticed was that the very few other people with obvious disabilities in the room would nod their head, and that there was a reason to create what our ability is today. And so after a period of time and enough speeches in front of other people with disabilities and able-bodied people, I realized that there's a place, not for another disability service provider necessarily, because that's well served. There's a place to create the business case to hire people with disabilities. That if we're so prevalent and we have the ability to do the job, and yet the unemployment rate is 70%, it seems to me 10 years ago that there was a way to create an our ability which builds the business case with businesses to build employment. And so went home one afternoon and said to my wife that I'd had enough of the TV industry and that I wanted to start something. And thankfully, she was extremely supportive. And so left a high-paying job and started my own organization, and that was almost 10 years ago. And what our ability, and if you're on the computer, and I know some of you are, ourability.com is the website. What our ability was and is a network between businesses and individuals with disabilities interested in finding one another. We started out as a mentor network and then very quickly morphed into 2 things. And the 2 things are a bridge to one another. One, on one side of the bridge, we get emails every day, phone calls every day. Disability service providers reach out to us every day to find out what open positions we have with the businesses that we work with. And so one side of the bridge is a portal on our website where individuals with disabilities can sign in, tell us who they are, tell us their ability, and then we put it into our system. It's not a resume upload by any means. It is something that you have to think about who you are and answer questions. And then the other side of the bridge is the business that I mentioned. The businesses want to search the database, find candidates, and then they asked us pretty quickly if we could build a jobs board for them. And so that became transactional, and that was really easy to do. So we built a bridge, and we built a place for businesses to post jobs. This was going along really great, and then it occurred to me that there were other disability groups out there, like Virginia Ability being one, that could use some similar systems, and probably had people with disabilities reaching out to them asking for help finding a job. Most certainly had businesses asking to find candidates. And so we started to reach out to like-minded organizations to see if they wanted to put our system on their website. And so we're thankful to be working with 5 other organizations around the US. And we just had a conversation yesterday to launch it throughout Canada. And so we're really excited about that. What we're also excited about is the work that we've been doing in the last 12 months. We've done a really good job with this portal, but we knew that we needed to use new technology to enhance it. And with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can do a much better job in using voice, in using a chatbot, in using machine learning processing to do a better job in engaging people on the front end and matching them to a career path. And so what we're really excited about come November 15th, and Virginia Ability is coming along for the ride, is starting our new portal, which is Microsoft Azure driven, artificial intelligence driven, with voice technology to chat with you on the website, on your phone, on your tablet, and soon Google Alexa or Amazon Alexa and Google Home. and use voice technology to build a profile. And then the Jobs Ability Board, which is what it'll be called, the Jobs Ability system, will help you along a career path with existing jobs today that match your profile. And that is all done on your home screen. So we're really excited about what we're doing and where we're going. And the reason we're doing it is because of everything that I mentioned. I didn't want to be unemployed. I chose an industry that I would enjoy so that I would like getting up and going to work. And yet the world, the able-bodied world, wasn't ready for me. And so what I'm creating today is what I needed a generation ago and what I think some people need today. So we're creating an online virtual job coach and a bridge to employment that is most definitely needed. And we are really excited about that. And we're excited about it for all the reasons that I mentioned. It isn't about the job necessarily, although, you know, we should like where we work. It's about what the job affords, which is economic independence, being able to put money away, being able to have recreation that we can handle and enjoy and adapt to, and to be able to afford that recreation. And, you know, to be able to have, in my case, all the things that I wanted, which was a family and a dog and a house and a pickup truck. And those are the things that my employment has been able to provide me. And so I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited to share those things with you, because this is really important in my life. And like I said, normally I get to get up on stage and tell you some jokes and make you laugh and make you cry. I don't get to do that as much here on this virtual meeting. But what I do get to do is impress upon you how very important it is, the work that we're all doing. That there are individuals with disabilities out there today that want to show off their value, that they want to be able to go to work, they want to be able to have a family, they want to be able to vote, they want to be able to experience all the pluses and minuses in life that life provides. And to be able to do that, we have to provide all of the elements in life that we all take for granted. Let me give you an example. My wife is a one-on-one nurse in a special ed classroom in a public school here in New York State. She deals with parents all day long of children with special needs, and these children are anywhere from, let's say, 7 to 12 years old. So not transition age yet, not thinking about a career path, not thinking about anything other than getting through today. But what has become evident to me through the anecdotes from my wife and other special ed classroom situations is that all too often we don't make the dream big enough. That my dream was to do all those things I mentioned, to run a TV station, and thank goodness my parents allowed me the opportunity to pursue my dream. Somewhere along the way, we have stopped ourselves in allowing our kids with disabilities to achieve their dream. And what it really means is we've stopped ourselves from allowing our children with disabilities to fail and succeed. Because you succeed through learning and you learn through failure. And I was really, really lucky that my parents allowed me to do that. And I can't stress that enough. And one of the reasons why I do what I do with our small business and creating this entrepreneur idea that supports individuals with disabilities in all the ways that I mentioned is because I was able to fail before. And I was able to fail so I could learn how to do this successfully. And what we need to do in the disability advocacy space, what we need to do in the business space, what we need to do in the general population is allow our community to try, our community to succeed and fail at the same time. And employment is a big part of that. Not everybody will work out. The job function still has to get done, right? It's very key. The job function still has to get done, but with a reasonable accommodation and with understanding a common language with the business and an open-mindedness with recruiting managers and hiring managers willing to be welcoming to a new diverse population. We can do that, and we can create and tap into a 70% of the disability population that is unemployed. And before COVID, what was really key was we were effectively at this country at full employment. We were. I ran into businesses all day long that couldn't find enough employees. Okay, COVID hit, but it will be done someday. maybe a year, maybe 2 years, whenever, but it will be done someday. And then our economy will ramp back up and we'll be right back into the same situation that we're effectively at full employment. And now is the time to be prepared for that moment when we include people with disabilities into our Rolodex, into our conversation, and to be able to bring us into future employment opportunities. It's so very important, and it's important to grow our economy on a macro level. It's important to grow our economy on a micro level, like with me, so that there's less people on Social Security disability benefits and more people paying taxes. And that's why I do what I do, and I do it for very personal reasons with myself, and I hopefully help many other people around the world, and I'm really proud to do that. So Bob, I will pause there. I'm looking at my agenda, and as the fire trucks go by outside, I will turn it back to you and be willing to answer questions and whatever you want to talk about.
Stay on. Just go ahead and stay on, John, and we will go into our Q&A. I did want to ask you one question before we bring all the presenters back. I mean, one, thanks for sharing your story, your journey. You were motivated to start your own business. Matthew shared his journey about starting his own business. Are there resources that are available, for those who either, can't get into the corporate job world or another, company or small business in their community that might be interested to have a gift and talent to start up their own business? What resources would you direct them to?
That's a great question, Bob. I think the first resource that really allowed me to do this was that I had been well known in the community in the Albany area, and so I was able to tap into some of those relationships. Like everything else, it comes back to sort of who you know. If you're out there and you're interested in starting your own business, really talk within your own community to your credit unions, your banks, your small business development corporations, Virginia Ability. See who knows whom, right? And start there. From there, I spoke to Voc Rehab. I spoke to some disability organizations. I really didn't get a lot of help with them, but I had not had services before for a very long time. So that wasn't a pathway for me, but I would urge you to speak to Voc Rehab and see if there are monies available for certain things to help you along your business path. But to really answer your question, Bob, one of the reasons Syracuse University reached out to us is because there are more and more organizations that want to start an entrepreneur path. And that's really key for our community because employment is so hard. And so I think what will happen here in the next 10 years, you're going to get more universities, you're going to get more small business development corps reaching our community and start entrepreneur programs just for individuals with disabilities. It's going to be more evident that this is a possibility and a real venture and has success behind it. We were in a small business development corp incubator, and we're one of the only ones that survived, and we were obviously disability owned. And so, we can show some success, and those successes will lead to future successes. So again, I think those are the opportunities that are in front of you if you're interested in a business.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So stay on at this time. I would like to invite Kimberly Wilson. Kimberly is a board member and also with the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. And she's going to facilitate our Q&A. So welcome back, Matthew. And if Sarah and Josh can join as well. And Anna, you can unmute your line. And Kimberly, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it over to you for the Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you for everyone that is on the webinar today. Excuse me, and all of our panelists. It's just been really enlightening. I've been taking tons and tons of notes just to kind of follow along, just for my own edification or questions that I may have. And actually, John, if you don't mind, since you were just last speaking, I thought I would start with a question actually from myself, but also from one of our participants. For me, do you think telework, and I realize that all positions aren't able to telework, and that's going to be part 2 of my question from one of our participants. Do you think telework has been a game changer to kind of what I would call level out the possibility of, how we employ persons with disabilities? It puts employers in a position where they're saying, okay, we're all at home, we're all on the same level playing field, right?
Yeah, I do, Kimberly. I think it's a real opportunity for our community. Listen, we are, we are a #1 problem solvers to be able to adapt to an able-bodied world, right? I mean, that's one of the big benefits that I have as a person with a disability, and Josh and Matthew as well, that we know how to adapt. But there is no doubt also at the same time that one of the hardest things is to adapt to somebody's physical space. And so if we can be comfortable in our own space and make the keyboard work for me, make the mouse work for me, make the, just in this one instance, it's a lot more comfortable for me, and then I can get about my business. I think what's happening here with COVID is that it is an opportunity for individuals with disabilities to use technology to our advantage. We already have been using technology anyway, and to be able to acclimate to the work environment easier. I think you're seeing our world adapt to this Zoom and Teams world a lot more than the able-bodied population, because we're used to it. So I think there is a real opportunity here to continue to do it. I think it does present challenges for some parts of our population. If you're in the DD community and you're looking for your first entry-level position, that may not be there anymore. And so, because a lot of service industries have really struggled. So I think those organizations that train and those organizations that help build recruitment, have to think about new models to tap into that entry-level position, especially in the DD world. But in the neurodiverse population, in the physical space, in the veteran space with disability, this is a great opportunity for us, no pun intended, to put our best foot forward and to use technology to our advantage. And that is, that is what we should be doing. And I think in the next year, you're going to see our numbers tick up because of exactly this moment.
Absolutely. And one of the questions was about, it was, I think, a statement, but also posed in framing this part of my question was people with disabilities who are looking for jobs in the trades, and they're not able to work from home, and that the pandemic is really holding them back. And with your job board, are you hearing this from your, potential employers on your board? How are they giving you feedback about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, some of the trades are struggling. Some of the entry-level people are struggling on the way into the trades. There's no doubt about it. I think one of the things that will happen at the same time with all the things I mentioned with technology, the trade industries are going to start looking at how to train our community better, starting virtually and then moving into opportunity in person. The reason I think that is because I mentioned the work that we're doing with our board in Canada. What they're doing is they're piloting a project with the agriculture world and with the mining industry. Again, 2 industries that you wouldn't think fit really well with disability, but with entry level and the developmental disability community, yes, it does. And so we're building training models. We're building a career path through our AI machine learning situation where we can start that conversation and help the mining industry and the ag industry reach our population early on. When we can show that people are interested in training and being trained, that's where this becomes really successful. So I think we have to be more intelligent on the business side of it. We have to lead businesses in certain industries to this. But I know that the businesses want this because they have to find employees.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. And as we move through our questions, I'm trying to kind of segue really nicely, but I will pose to Josh and Matthew as far as starting your own business and what gave you that courage? I heard, Matthew, I heard your story of you were just tired of, having to apply and apply and apply and know that you're capable, knowing that you're able. But, and maybe even employers that you viewed as very proactive employers. What encouragement can you give to our participants on today and also the employers that are listening?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has always bugged me about employment as a whole is that we don't actively talk about entrepreneurship as much as I think we should as a potential way to employ folks with disabilities. I love being an entrepreneur because, right, like it's mine, right? And I certainly have no problems negotiating and dealing with the boss, but like it is really refreshing and rewarding to know that the six-wheel ship is going to sink or swim depending on how hard I put effort into it. And I can sort of set my own path in how I want to go about doing things. And so I would love to see more businesses have some kind of entrepreneurial lean as an option for folks with disabilities. Not to say that needs to be the only option, because it doesn't, but it's not talked about enough. And I'm always kind of, as in many cases being one of the sole entrepreneurs kind of around the table, I'm always kind of pounding the table when we're having these employment conversations to say, why is this not more of an active thing?
Right.
And I think one of the things that probably makes it not more active is because people who want to start a business are scared, right? And you mentioned sort of taking that leap of faith, right? And for me, it is a giant leap of faith, because I don't know every day when that next paycheck is coming in, and I don't know, if I'm going to be able to live, month to month kind of thing off of what I'm making for my work. But that gives me the drive every day to continue to send emails and continue to try to connect with people and continue to hopefully have success. And I can tell you that success is 15 times more sweeter when I get that, big check for that consulting project that I've done, because it's been on my shoulders and I've been able to do it. So I really would love to see us take more of an approach towards entrepreneurship to help kind of lessen that gap of unemployment for folks with disabilities.
That's excellent, because I think that's part of the resolution and how this all evolves, and I think businesses are looking for specificity and how, to give, whether that's through consultants or through just really listening to our work populations and what the need is. Josh, can you talk a little bit about the intentionality? Look, I put you on the spot. The intentionality of businesses and maybe a little bit of the specifics of Sportable and what happens within your business there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of my path to employment, I mean, I sort of made an active choice to find employment where I could use my disability as an advantage, right? So, like, from Sportable's perspective, and having a employee that is also like a user of the services that they provide is a good thing for Sportable. So, and I've seen this through a lot of folks that were sort of like mentors for me, and folks that I, looked at who had acquired a disability and then gained employment. And to be honest, most of us tend to work in this space. I'm, a good friend of mine sells adaptive vans, and he's quadriplegic, and I'm like, okay, so this is the space where we can actually find work. So that's like a big thing for me. In terms of Sportable, I mean, we're very intentional of getting out into the community and finding our athletes. So that's kind of a big part of my job. And the way that I do that is I get in front of people that serve folks with disabilities. So who is that? That's physical therapists, occupational therapists, doctors, nurses, folks in the community like Voc Rehab people. We connect with these people and we get in front of them, and then we use that as a reference source. And I think that for employers, getting in front of those same kinds of groups and networking with those same kind of folks can connect you to a pipeline of people with disabilities who want employment and who are out and being active and they're engaged in their community in ways that, like, other than employment, such as adaptive sports, such as I don't know, peer support networks, things like that. These nonprofits are helping and working with people with disabilities who are engaged in their community and are already doing a lot of work essentially for free. And if you can get connected with those groups, I think you can find a lot of really great potential employees.
Right. Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. And that really kind of bridges us into the beginning conversation that Anna was talking about within her presentation of the what it is that her organization does and addresses you know, the discriminatory and cultural biases around persons with disabilities, and what we can do as employers, and speaking about our lobbyists, speaking to organizations, being that voice. Anna, are you still on? For some reason, I can't see you there.
I am.
Yes. If you were to give two or three talking points, just based off even what Josh was just indicating, what employers can take today back to their organizations to say, these are our 3 top points that we're going to do this year as a call to action to employ persons with disabilities.
Well, I would say one is make your job announcements very welcoming to people with disabilities.
Excellent.
Put right up front in very clear language that you're encouraging everyone to apply. Everyone that has the skills for this job is welcome to apply here. We are looking for talent. And if you happen to have an applicant that has a disability, feel comfortable reaching out if you're not comfortable to Department of Labor. Look at their website. Again, it's EARN is the program that gives a lot of information on reasonable accommodations and how to get comfortable talking about disability. People with disabilities are comfortable talking about what they need. So as an employer, you know, you can ask, you can find out what you're legally able to do, but you know, open the conversation and make sure people know. The other thing is, if you have the opportunity to take part in job fairs, to actually be an active participant, to send your company reps there, to look for people with talent, that's an important thing to do. But I think too is to also take a look at disability as a natural part of the human existence, a natural part of the human experience. And in that way, we can all be more comfortable with it, being around people with disabilities of all kinds, and just understanding that this is not the entire person. This is a challenge that the person lives with every day. That I agree with the previous presenters, makes people with disabilities extremely resilient and extremely strong. And I think that they're a benefit to any business. I think those are the big takeaways I would like to leave with you today.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us as well. I do have a question for Sarah. Sarah, can an existing 401k be moved to an ABLE account? And how would that work? One of our participants is asking that question.
So that's a great question. You actually would have to liquidate the assets in a 401k. Any contributions to ABLE needs to be cash. There is, however, an opportunity to roll over an existing 529 account. So for someone who may be saving for a child in a 529, and then they get some sort of disability diagnosis and they want more flexibility with those funds, you can roll a 529 account over into an ABLE account. But a 401k can't be directly rolled over. There's no provision for that. But you know, depending on the advice that, a financial expert, gives the individual. There may be an opportunity to, stop contributing to the 401k, open an ABLE account, and move forward if that's, deemed to be a better savings vehicle for that individual. Good question.
Excellent. Thank you. I thought so as well. I see we do have a lot of passionate people in our question and answering. And Bob has answered some of those questions about the accessibility of our webinar today. So I know he will be following up with individuals. But Bob, I think I've covered all the questions that are out there, including my own. I just want to again thank everyone for their questions. And I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Bob.
Great. So on behalf of Virginia Ability, I just want to thank all of our speakers and facilitators, to our participants. I really hope that there were some good takeaways today. And hopefully maybe this is the beginning of just reaching out. Virginia Ability will be providing the resources from each of our presenters, and happy to work with organizations. We'd love to partner, especially with some of the things that were talked about today around entrepreneurship, some of the disincentives. So however Virginia Ability can help navigate that, we're more than welcome to work with you. So again, thanks to our speakers and facilitators. Also, I want to recognize and thank our 2020 sponsors: Performance Food Group, Southern States, Anthem, DARS, North Star, Able Now, Dominion Energy, and Circle S. And lastly, I have an announcement for those who registered by Friday midnight. We were offering a $50 gift card, and so congratulations to Sheila Baker with Virginia Commonwealth University. I'll be reaching out to you via your email address to work on getting the gift card to you. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And the webinar, the forum was recorded, and that'll be available as well. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.